Welcome, welcome, welcome to another installment of Connect with Carla B, where it's all about connections. You guys know, I can't tell you enough, I am South St. Pete centric as far as I'm concerned. South St. Pete is its own city inside of a larger city called St. Petersburg, Florida. So while y'all running away complaining about, rent prices, all those things are real, I agree. But there is a vibration in South St. Pete and a progress, measurable progress that I have witnessed myself personally, that I don't feel like I could experience any other place. It's why I live here, why I'm 10 toes down here, and why I keep asking people, what are some of these other places? What do they call, like Clearwater? I'm like, where's that? Tampa, where's that? I don't even know where these places are because I'm in South St. Pete. So today I get to sit here at a place that actually I've never gotten the opportunity to sit at. So it's the first time for me. It's at the lake, and it's a location where my guests would host these lakeside chats. And I would always be like, where's the lakeside in Childs Park? Well, guess what? It's a lake. I'm sitting by it. I'm sitting in a gazebo that's really cool. And I'm sitting here with, I'll say, your brother, John.
Yeah.
Right? Who's a friend of mine, who is a political leader, and who is a contributor to our community in more ways than I can count. So I'm going to ask Brother John, why don't you introduce yourself to us the way Nina Simone would introduce you if Nina Simone were here to make the introduction about Brother John?
That's a big one. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. I think that she would introduce me as someone who is a student of history, who reflects on the struggles and the challenges that have faced our community, particularly Black men in our community, and who has committed and enlisted into the struggle to advance and improve the quality of life for Black men in particular, but all people in general.
Well, dang. And he's also a grandfather.
Absolutely.
He's a father.
I don't know if Nina would know that.
He is a husband. I know these things.
Yeah.
He is a brother. Is why he says your brother, John. He's somebody that I have broken bread with multiple times. That we share common beliefs, and we both share a passion and a love for our community. Where to take this? So let's take it straight to, do you remember how we first connected, or what is your earliest memory of connecting with me?
My earliest memory of connecting with you, we were doing it was like a Ramadan event. With the Muhammad's Mosque. We was actually the Tampa Bay study group at the time. We hadn't achieved mosque status. And it was, I want to say Snell Isle or somewhere.
Okay.
And you were helping organize the event.
Dang.
And I had seen
You're making me try to remember this.
No, I remember seeing you around, but I saw you in your element at this event. And we had our regional minister, Minister Rasul. He came in.
Yes, Rasul Muhammad.
Yes. And Brother Stanley Muhammad was our minister at the time.
That's my brother.
And I just remember the space, how you just owned the space, and how you were making sure that everything was in place and everybody was helped, and that was my
I wonder if that was in
impression.
the clubhouse at my condo. I
think so.
So that's what it was.
Yes.
It was a clubhouse
That's
where
exactly right.
where I, Carla Bristol,
exactly right.
made tofu,
That's exactly
some
right.
tofu dish and stuff.
Yeah.
That's it worked that day. Let me tell y'all.
Yes.
Yes. So that's right. So we've been connected for a minute.
That was
because I bought that condo in 1999.
Okay.
So that would have had to have been 1999, and I was there from 99 to 2003.
Okay.
So somewhere in there.
Right, and that's the earliest memory. But I think we might have met before that. But
Yeah, because I came to St. Pete in '96.
Okay.
Came to St. Pete in '96, and I lived. I call it in a transient community. It was up where I think everybody that moves to Tampa Bay moves to this area. It was up by Gandy.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing but apartmentville.
My daughter's first apartment.
No real true sense of community. And I couldn't wait to get my vibrations down here in South St. Pete because I was doing so much down here. I don't want to say single-handedly because you always talk about the we.
Yes.
But your involvement in Child's Park is what causes me to direct people all the time to consider Child's Park, because although I don't live here, I'm always like, well, I got to get my Child's Park membership paid because I need to be, because I've witnessed progress here in Child's Park. Tell me about how did you and Brother John, because y'all be trying to remind me of where you came from.
Okay.
So how did you end up being president of Neighborhood Association, and then how did you develop, or where did you develop the skills for action? Because I find you to be a person of action.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So I'll flip the question and talk about the way I developed the skills, and because that's what led me to Child's Park was the skills development in the Nation of Islam. And so when I joined the Nation of Islam in 1997, I just really took to it like a fish to water. And we had just, the study group was just starting. And in this iteration of, and so I was what they would call the first fish. That's what Brother Wilma and his wife, Sister Ernestine Amina, catering. Their family started it. So Sister Naira and her family. And I actually joined before Naira. That's another story we talk about. But when I joined, we had these study circles, and we did facilitation training on how to manage the study circle. And that was really when I recognized that I had a gift for organizing conversations and directing the flow to be able to move towards action. And then with the mission of the Nation of Islam. I'm
sorry, I'm smirking because I'm like, when you said that, I just started thinking about, all right, Sister Carla, we're going to land a plane.
Yeah. We're going to land a plane. And so that's right. Yeah, because I can go long. So, but so in the nation and facilitating those study group circles is where I realized that I had a gift for bringing people together and organizing towards movement. And then I attended some neighborhood association meetings and addressing the issues in the community. One day, it didn't take a day, but I organized a conversation with the police in the community. And following that meeting, the elders and the members and the board surrounded me and basically told me that I was going to be the president of the neighborhood association.
How long have you lived in this neighborhood?
All my life, basically, in one form or another. So we've been in and out of the neighborhood. We moved a lot, but it was always right around this area. Wow. But I settled here maybe when I was 14, so 1990.
And what if you were to give me 3 things that have changed from when you were coming up, pre-20s, to today? What would 3 things be?
In this community?
In this community specifically?
Specifically, the demographics have changed from a majority, Black to, when I started, it was like 93%. Now it's maybe in the low 80%. African American. The programming and opportunities for youth has changed, and
how so?
It's more robust, I would say, in some ways, and in other ways, I think it went backwards.
Yes,
because we did have a lot of opportunities as youth here. I think it's more siloed and more narrow now with the opportunities that are present for youth. You have to be connected to a program when before, if you were young and you wanted to do something, you could just show up. And there was an opportunity for you. And I think the economy of the neighborhood has changed. And the way people get money, here, we leave the community. There's not a lot of business that's here. So most people who are here work outside of the community.
And And then are you finding then they're leaving as they make more money than
They are.
while others are coming to what's known as higher elevation.
Mm-hmm.
It's how some people are viewing it, like, oh, I want to move to Charles Park.
Yep.
It's higher elevation.
At one point that we did see that, I was learning about climate gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was a lot of the hurricane season was really big. And I think it was when we worked together on, I think that was Irma, the eyes, Irma, and everybody had to evacuate.
Yep.
When you looked at the map, the only place that didn't have to evacuate, one of the only, was Charles Park.
Yep.
And I think that made that more attractive to people for a number of reasons, but also insurance.
Yes.
As insurance prices started to go up and you have to pay for flood insurance. Over here you didn't, but now they just changed it where if you have citizens, even if you're not in a flood area, you're still going to have to have flood insurance.
Wow. So that makes
that was the way that the governor is supposed to help us. Right?
Wow. Yeah. So now, no matter where, you have that additional burden, is what it would be called.
Right.
You own your house, you still got to pay
flood insurance
for the possibility, and then fight to get the right to get stuff fixed.
Yep.
I can't, too much.
WTF. Welcome to Florida.
Welcome. Oh, I like that. I love that, because who would have thunk I would have been living here, and now I can't imagine living anywhere else.
Wow.
I've discovered we have over, I think, 900 or something rivers and lakes and in Florida. Yeah. I'm like, how can I get to visit every last one of these? And in our county we have them, and there's places I've ridden my bicycle to here that I'm like, I've never been here.
Right.
But this is so tranquil. We got to find our way to tranquility. So then you become neighborhood association president for how long? Because you had to basically be like, cut the apron string. Okay, y'all, this is it.
It was 10 years. No ways tired, but I think it was just one of those, every year when we have an election, I was always unopposed. Nobody really ran, to be president. And so we just, kept going.
How did you create, or do you feel like you have created credibility with, let's say, the people you used to run with before you became the guy we know as your Brother John? How have they embraced the person we know as Brother John? Because I find what happens within communities is people from the outside could be like, man, that guy is so dynamic.
Right.
And I've, like me, Carla Bristol, saying, I've watched the work, I've watched the progress, I've watched the results. But people who knew you when, they still hold on to it. They struggle to believe that this person is this person. So they don't I wish they would even watch. If they watch, they would learn something. But I don't think they watch. They're just like, I know him.
From before,
So how have people that you knew before embraced, the Brother John that I know?
Yeah, I that's a beautiful question, and it's like I'm getting overwhelmed with emotion because I was always blessed with support from my community. So when I joined the Nation of Islam, it was people that was like, thank God he finally got into Sakayu. I was bad. Okay. And so they was like, thank God.
Bad meaning bad, not bad meaning good.
Not bad meaning good. And they encouraged it. And so I've always, from the 90s, when I first, joined the Nation, and I was out with the self-improvement program, and I would come to them and have conversations with them about what I was doing and what I was into. Even if they didn't subscribe, they always respected it because they saw my commitment to it. And so I've always had the support of my community from like day one. And a lot of my day ones have accepted Islam, some of them, or they live, try to live the principles. And so it's been just an amazing experience because they saw me. I think it was the consistency also, because I just didn't stop. And when I started, I remember, being in my living room with one of my partners at the time, and, we were about to do what we usually do, he thought, but then I told him I wasn't doing that anymore. And, he was shocked. He gave me this look, but he was like, okay, I respect it. And now when I see him, that's his brother John's story.
Mm.
I remember when he first got going.
Oh,
and I remember
wow.
when he, and I remember, so they remember that transition. And I think a lot of people give me the "I'm proud of you. I always knew you would be." I got another one of my partners said, "Man, you always was different.
Wow.
You was always a good dude." And so it's just a blessing to have, that type of circle.
What does our community have that would help, that helps, let's call the dudes who aren't in the nation, who don't have the paternal figure for guidance? What do you feel that we have outside of, I know the 8 Kings are intentional and deliberate about trying to do things. But first of all, they honor thy mother.
Yes.
So I know, because I was honored.
Yes.
They continue to do that. And I know that there's initiatives, but outside of the 8 Kings, what is available in our community that you can point to or point people to that say, hey man, if you just got released, like, you know who reached out to me? Scott. I don't know if you remember Scott. Scott did some work for me. Yeah. Scott had to go to prison to finish his probation. He was out on probation because he drove to Tampa and wasn't supposed to be out of the county. This guy got released from prison and then found my number and texted me and was like, hey, because I guess I'm somebody that he viewed as that always treated him with respect. Right. So what is here in St. Petersburg for people like Scott, returning citizens?
I think you named a few of those things. One of them is PERC, the People Empowering Restoring Communities. And I worked there for about 9 months. And they have some great support systems and programming. And then originally, my first answer that came to mind before we started thinking about organizations is we have each other. And everyone is a resource or could be a resource to one another. And I think we don't leverage each other's knowledge enough.
Oh, wow.
Because there's places and things that you know about that I don't. And so just asking each other that question, hey, what's out here? What's over there? And then being able to catalog that. The Campbell Park Resource Center is another spot where you can get a lot of information. They actually put together an asset map that has a lot of resources where, and it's divided by category. So if you need health, care, educational assistance and job assistance, like they have it broken out. So it's a great tool. And then the Men in the Making, a lot of the mentoring programs, like the things that Reverend Irby's doing.
But I think Men in the Making, that's for younger men.
I'm sorry, yes, you're right.
So I'm thinking about some of these
returning citizens.
Older men.
Really, the only institutional operation that I'm familiar with is PERC. And then the rest of it just comes through connections and resources.
I liked what you said when you said we have each other and we don't value that enough. Because there was an older gentleman that stopped by the farm last week, and he was coming. He didn't know why he was coming. He was coming because he was like, I like the way your greens look. What are you using? We went from talking about the greens to talking about his, I think, 29-year-old daughter who he's ready to kick out of the house. He and his wife are ready to kick her out. And I said to him, like if I got all the time in the world, I said, do me a favor. Give her my contact information. I'll spend 1 week with your daughter. I'll help her get a job. If she can commit to spending a week with me, would you commit to not kicking her out for 1 week? I was like, and that's what I was willing to do. So you're right. That was my part that day, because I'm like, okay, this young lady has a mother, a father. The father, he confides that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in November, stage 4. And so he's at his wit's end. He has 2 other children. They're doing well. This particular daughter isn't. She has a son. He's 7 years old. But I literally offered this man to let me be like the auntie for your daughter. And that's what you're talking about.
And that's
like us for each other.
Real community. It's true community. It takes a village, mentality. Another place too, I think, is good for returning citizens is PTech.
Oh yes, at a trade,
because of the trades and the skills training that's available. Career Sources on the other side of it, but I think the Pinellas Technical College is another great spot. with the Public Works Academy. We worked on a campaign to ban the box for returning citizens in St. Pete. And so you can go through that academy and also apply for work with the city.
Oh, wow.
There's another one of those.
So I'm glad you reminded me of that, because they just had that career fair last week, and that's what I sent Scott.
Yeah.
He just called. I said, hey, here's something that's happening right now. They're having jobs, hiring on the spot. Let's go there. So now your council member, John Muhammad. You know, my fear about being involved in politics and city government is that it changes you. It restricts you. Has it been restrictive for you?
In some ways it has. And I remember Sherry Howard, may God be pleased with her. She came to a city council meeting and she kept saying, don't change. Don't change. That was like the last conversation that we had. And after she said it about the third or fourth time, I said, well, Sherry, I gotta change.
Right.
Because the job that I'm doing is different from what I've been doing in the community. So who I am as a core being and my values won't change, but the way I show up in community has got to change because the role that I'm in now is different. And so it's two sides of that coin. And I think a lot of times we resist change that may be good for us.
Right.
Because that's what we always told, man. You're going to get in this position and change. I have to in order to be effective. So that's my thoughts on that. But then
I will tell you, someone I respect and admire says they don't believe in change. They believe in evolving.
Okay.
So it's an evolution. And I was like, yeah, but change. I've always used the word change. Right. But they talk about it as an evolution.
Yeah.
And so we're always growing and evolving.
Absolutely.
So shout out to Mike Milner.
That's what's up. I'll take that. I totally receive that. Yes. And then restrictive in some ways because it makes you more mindful of, and I've always, had sense about it, but knowing that there are people who pay attention to me now who never paid attention to me before. And a lot of that attention, not a lot of it, sometimes that attention is looking for things that they can use to hurt me.
You got a whole peanut gallery now.
Yeah. And so that's been when it's not a challenge, it's again part of the evolutionary process where there are things that I would post, prior to being on council, or things that I would say prior to being on council. It has me mindful of the impact and the weight of that on other people who I hadn't considered before, because now my constituency and my base has grown. And so before, again, operating as a president of a neighborhood association with a population who's, 83 or at that time, 93% Black, you talk a certain way and you know that they get it. But now being a council member for a district where it's 60%, 64% African American, I'm mindful of, I have other people who I represent and they may not understand me the way that my community or my base does. And I have to explain more has been one of the things that I've ran into, because some things I can just say to my people and it's like, I get it. I know Brother John, he's my man. He's always been a good dude, that whole thing. But now it's when you say something to somebody who doesn't know you and they're not a part of the culture, they don't get it right away. And so I find myself being a little more patient and reserved, because sometimes people don't want to hear the explanation, or they don't want to hear the other part of it. And so that's been one of the
I can't help but think that you were on this side. Now you're on the other side of the veil. Have you had any aha moments like, this makes sense now why this person, this elected official, couldn't just give me, or why it just couldn't be done in the timing that I thought it could? Like, have you had an aha moment that you're in that seat?
I have had several of those moments, which is the time that it takes to get things done. As a community advocate and champion, it's always the urgency of now. But then being on the other side of the table and operating in the bureaucratic spaces, you have to make the proposal, get it on the agenda. And after it's on the agenda, it goes to a committee, and then the committee votes, and then they vote to bring it back. And so it just, the process is more drawn out, and it's slower than how we would do it in a neighborhood meeting. And also the contact. Talk about restrictions. I have a lot of people who I can just, text. So if we wanted to do something at the pool, it's like, okay, let me just make a call. But now I can't make those reaches directly. I have to reach their supervisors and go through the protocols and go through the layers, where being grassroots, I'm working with grassroots, but now being in the C-suite, being a board member for this municipal corporation called the City of St. Pete, following that protocol has been one of those things. Another aha moment for me, honestly, Sister Carla, is I can see how people can get caught up, because a lot of people, offer you things, and they flatter you, and they, everybody's so respectful of, the title and the position, and, Council Member Muhammad, and is there anything that you need? And so a lot of the deference, and, I can see how if you are missing something personally, how that can feed into your ego and get you caught up in that position and prestige. I get, people move out of the way when I walk in, and they've got, reserved spots. I get VIP badges and, those kind of things. And if you're afraid to lose that, if you've never had that, that type of attention, I see how people can get caught up into it and then start compromising, because now you get threatened with the loss of those types of benefits and privileges. I get tickets to the Rays game, all of the stuff that comes to. But if you buy into it and you allow that to make you, then people start slowly,
Yes, eventually.
Yeah.
How has you being an elected official impacted your family personally?
With what they say, it's like the same thing. But another part of this, being more public, but my family is like, they've been a part of this, and so this is not new. I guess this lifestyle is not new. Like, they've made the sacrifices for years, and so they have understood early on, my children and my wife as well. And I can say it, my children understand, because my wife understood that there's a calling on my life, and this calling to public service. They accepted and embraced it very early on when I joined the Nation of Islam. And again, a part of the culture and the way that we were taught, trained, and organized within that structure, I think prepared us for where we are now, because they've always been willing to let me do what I do. And so but there's also pride. They have that pride too. My middle daughter talks about, do you know who my daddy is? Baby girls, all of them are different. I was talking to my grandsons about we approved the funding for Bethel Heights or Citrus Grove, and I was telling them how.
What is that going to do?
So they're rehabbing it. So they took down the wall, they put windows in, new roof, and just rehabbing the complex. But when I told them we approved,
they have 3 bedrooms in there, I heard.
Yes,
I was like, what?
Nice.
What?
But the part that I'm getting at, when I told him that we approved the funding, he was on the playground telling his friends that his papa paid for, like, my papa paid for that fence. My papa bought those windows. So I thought that was funny.
Well, we had Corey Monroe's grandson come to the farm as part of the daycare's visit to the farm. And when he came, I made a point of saying to him, I want you to know, it's important that you know in front of his entire group that your grandfather allowed us to use his contractor's license to get this built.
Right.
Like, if it wasn't for him being a member of this community and trusting us to not jeopardize his license, I don't know that we would have this greenhouse.
Right.
So his wife called me and said, my grandson came home and he just couldn't stop talking about the farm. He was more excited about the fact that we had fish and worms and all of that. But I said, did he tell you that I took a moment to share the importance of what his grandfather has done, and that grandpa hasn't even been by yet? She said, what? She said, we coming by. We coming by. But I wanted him to know that, like, our community is made up of people.
Right.
And people just trusting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I asked somebody today, why do you answer the phone when I call? What is it about me
Right.
that makes you pick up the phone or respond to my text message? And so it was interesting to
Right.
hear, like, from their perspective,
Right.
what is it about that?
Corey Monroe wrote our first check for CDAT when we
Oh, really?
had our conversation about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to get started. And he said, well, what you need? I said, well, we're trying to get our articles of incorporation and file our 501c3. And he asked me how much it cost. I told him, and he wrote us a check.
I rock construction right here in our community. So it's like, how do we do more for people like IROC? Because we know if IROC gets the money, they're then making it funnels through our community.
Absolutely.
They have the daycare taking care They have 2 locations daycare
and
taking
the
care of our
product
kids.
Of the daycare, when you look at the children who have gone through that school,
let me tell
their
you,
daughter was the first black valedictorian at Boca Ciega. Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. What I knew was what I had called to say was that, honestly, you're talking about 4 and 5-year-olds. First of all, I told that day, I don't know what made me say, we just made collards. Can I offer you guys some collard greens?
Mm-hmm.
These kids, and I said, you just have to hold out your hand. We'll put a little bit. All except for one was willing to try.
Wow.
They were so well behaved, so well mannered. And again, there's something in the formula at some of these programs. How do we make sure that we're funding what works so we can give opportunities for expansion? That's what I mean, as somebody who gets to see kids all day, every day, they were an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to have them back because they're still so inquisitive. Their willingness to try the kinds of questions they ask. Like, dang, gives us hope. That's the future.
Absolutely.
That's part of why, for me, I do what I do. It's that, and that growing up to be the teenagers I get to serve, or serve beside. So we're talking about impact, right? And we're talking about the fact that you were neighborhood president, city council, but I can't help but talk about the fact that there are people who view you a completely different way than what I know. Right. And so, although I wish I could say it's baffling, it doesn't baffle me. It doesn't surprise me, and it's 100% not on this side based on the work, but it's based on your affiliation with the Nation of Islam. Right. How does that feel for you to know how that has changed your life for the good, but how people could view it as being bad?
That's a great question. And early on, I gave a lot of attention to it. But I think that's also what fuels these conversations and introductions, and I see it as an opportunity. One of the things that I've always been interested in was ways that we could unite communities and inspire change, through that unity, and understanding that unity is not uniformity. And so what I've been doing recently is those who came out against me and opposed me, I've been having conversations with members of that community. And we actually have started this little study group now. It's about 13 of us. And we were just together, really just discussing our differences and really having those conversations in a real way. What they call them, courageous conversations.
So it's a diverse group, you're saying.
It's a diverse group. And
so different religious disciplines, different.
Mostly mostly members of the Jewish community.
And you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And myself. Karen Lieberman, Margie Joy Green, Sandra Brown, Sandra Brown.
Yeah. And she's not Jewish.
Yeah, right. But the Gulf Coast Jewish Services. So as a part of this Black Jewish dialogue, and it's been amazing. At first it threw me for a loop. I wasn't prepared for it. I should have been.
Right.
But that's that naivete, and so when it happened, it was like, okay, wait, what is this? And as being a spiritual man, one of the things that I was always taught, and I grew up in the Word, is that the way that you overcome propaganda and this flood of negativity is just through, the scripture says, the blood of the lamb and the word of your testimony. And so I believe that, I was covered by God, in that moment. And the life that I've lived was able to be a witness bearer for who I am, and how I've shown up in spaces consistently. And to a person, everyone who I've engaged with who may have had that viewpoint, after we have a conversation, after we have it changes their view and their perspective of me. Maybe not the Nation of Islam, and that's fine, because everybody has the right to their viewpoint and their opinion. And that's the other part of it. I respect people's opinion enough to listen. Because sometimes people say, I respect your opinion, but they don't respect it enough to actually listen and hear it. So I respect it enough to listen and say, okay, if I were you, I could see how you would feel that way, but I'm not you.
Right.
And that's the difference.
You don't have that lived experience.
And you don't have mine.
Yeah.
And so being able to understand how a person can reach the conclusion that they made and respect it, but also disagree with it, and then move forward to harmonize around things that we do have in common and things that we can agree on.
But it's agree to disagree agreeably.
Yeah, but for me, agreeing to disagreeing has been used as a way to not have a conversation.
Yeah.
And what I see as the agree to disagree is, in order to get to an agreement,
yes,
because that's the first part of the agree.
Yeah,
you have to go through the process. Of conversing.
And it ain't easy.
It's not,
right? Because people are tied to their beliefs, and it's weird for somebody to say it's okay to be tied to your beliefs. That's perfectly fine.
The way I say it is like this: I respect your right to be right. You have a right to be right. I just want you to respect mine. You didn't wake up this morning saying I'm going to do everything wrong.
Right.
And everything that I was told before today was not true, and I'm going to change. So you hold that, and you have a right to that. I just want my right to be respected as well. And once we get to a place where we see, okay, this is how I heard it, and I don't know how much time we got, Carla B.
You ain't.
But it's where I've been able to have these conversations is really showing people different communities are hearing it different ways.
Right.
And so if you love me and I'm telling you that I'm the product of this tree, how could the tree be bad? Or how could the tree be a hate tree if the product of the hate tree is love? The fruit of the tree is love. And everybody has had that experience. By God's grace, you can't find too many people that can tell you that I've been disrespectful or hateful or have said anything intentionally to hurt or harm them. Right. And I'm telling you that those core values and those things is what I learned under this person who you're calling a hater. So it confuses a lot of people because when they hear it one way. But when I hear it a totally different way.
Lately I've been referencing it as the quilt, right? So the thing that amazes most of us about quilts is, and I'm a quilter, so I could use the analogy, is that there's this various, fabrics, various patterns, and then they all have to come together to make something really beautiful. And if it's just one fabric, I think that's a blanket. Right.
It's not a quilt.
But it's not a quilt. But it's, there's batting in the middle, there's binding that goes around the edges to secure the different intricacies of the pattern that's made up of different pieces. Right. And to me, that's the type of community I want to live in. That's what I get to live in. And that's what I want. So I don't need every block to be the same. I like the differences. And I always feel in most instances we have more in common than not.
Absolutely. And it's just the way we express ourselves. Another one of the analogies that I use is, if we're trying to get to 7, and I ask a room of people, give me 2 numbers to get to 7. Yeah. And there's, everybody can give, different combinations of numbers. Yes. But once you understand the principle that we're trying to get to, then we don't argue. Right. But if you lose the fundamental principle, then you'll say, well, I was taught 6 and 1. And you hold that because that's what you were taught and that's all you know. And then you say, well, I was taught 4 and 3. Now we're arguing of our 2 numbers are the right numbers because we've lost sight of the bigger picture of what are we trying to get to, and there's multiple ways to get to that once you understand.
So you were appointed after one of the most rigorous job interviews I've ever seen. I've made clear to many that it's the kind of thing that college professors will teach about, because I'm confident as someone sitting in that room, someone who shed tears while in that room, because of the process, that it's something that will go down in history, because you were able to stand on your belief, which is what a man does, and not have to bow down about who you are and how, and then just focus on return everybody to what this is about and what it's for. And I just felt it was brilliantly done. So that now you're in the job. Now you have to look at how long is that term for?
So
you're in the job.
The appointment is 2 years because it changed, and so the term that I'm completing expires in January of 2025.
Okay.
And so I'll be running for re-election
in 2024?
Next year, next year.
Okay, so 2024.
2024 is when we'll be campaigning so that we can, go beyond January 2025.
How long have you been in office now?
7 months. 7, 8 months.
What 2 or 3 things can you tell me that you've been able to accomplish in 6 or 7 months? Which is like interesting. Yeah. That's an aggressive question, Carla.
It is.
But I'm just saying, here we are.
I think, again, inspiring change and bringing communities together in a way that I hadn't seen in a long time. Through our town hall series, the listening sessions that we've been able to do. I've also was able to make a new business item to close some loopholes that existed in our housing policy as it relates to source of income discrimination, and to strengthen that policy to make it a little tougher for the bad actors to get around it. And also, I'm trying to think. That is, I wasn't ready for that one. Still, I got to get better on my political savvy. I'm a public servant first. So I'll stop there. I know the housing work that we've been able to do, the continued advocacy around CRA funding for people in the CRA, so to assist with creating processes to make it more accessible for the community. Yeah.
From the moment that was launched, I took issue with it being practical for businesses, practical for the owners of the property, but specifically people operating businesses, homeowners. How are we supposed to access this, especially since my belief is people who have either had businesses forever or been living in the home forever should just be grandfathered. Let's just give them the money. Why do they have to go get a loan, finish it, then and then they got to work to get the reimbursement? Because look at people, look at Miss Annie, who did go through, and no more is the store, right? Because while she's waiting for that to happen, the reimbursement, business is still happening, and she's still sitting on a loan, and it's just the model. So this is what I love about this idea of intentional progress. Is I always say make it make sense. It just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to businesses in our community that had to go maybe to loan sharks to get money to improve their business, or versus we have the money. Let's let it benefit the people who have been holding it down all these years.
And I think that's another part of the we talk about what we've been able to accomplish. I think we're getting a lot more attention as a council and as a local government because of the appointment, because there are people who are coming to me asking me about things that are happening in the city who were not engaged or they were not involved. I'm having people telling me that they are watching the council meetings now, which was really the objective. That they're actually watching the meetings and following these these things, and so that inspiring change piece has really been one of the biggest contributions in this early stage. And as I'm learning, again, how to operate from this side within the process, because we always were engaged with the budgeting process. We had budget recommendations. We passed the community benefits agreement. And, you know, we've done a lot of policy work on community plan. A lot of the things that we did prior to coming on council now is saying, okay, how can we ensure that these programs and projects are being implemented with fidelity, and working within the administrative aspect of it, because as a champion, we get it through, we get it passed legislatively, and then we're on to the next, you know, project. Right. So now, as a board member, being able to look at it and say, okay, we got it passed, how's it performing, and how can we improve it? And so we're doing changes right now to the community benefits agreement because of what we've learned, looking at how the one community plan, how we can dust that off and start funding some of those recommendations and things that are in these plans, is the part that I'm really starting to grow into and start working with now. But the 7 months have been a lot of learning, Sister Carla, just the scope of the job, and you know, utility rate studies, and you know, stormwater master planning, and you know, those types of things have taken a lot of, you know, my attention.
Come up to speed.
Just to come up to speed. And so you go in with your view of how you want to get things done, and then you realize, okay, there's some day-to-day things that I'm responsible for, developing a rhythm for these meetings, because we're meeting every Thursday and we're meeting on different topics. And so being able to keep all of that together, whereas a community organizer, you have your thing, your agenda, and your set focus, and you go in with that focus.
Right. Now you have to have a voice on all of these other things.
Your item is E1. And after E1 is voted on, you out of there.
Right.
You know? But now you're starting at A and working through the whole agenda and looking at the consent agenda and where the city's spending money and these blanket purchase agreements and all of these things, and really understanding the zoning, you know, in detail, because these are policies that will determine what we build, how we build, transportation planning, like a lot of those things. And that scope was what I would say. I wouldn't say that I wasn't prepared for, because I can read.
Right.
Which shout out to the literacy champions, but really being able to be effective and make good decisions, you know,
on behalf of
and with the best interest of your constituents in mind, has been the work that we've been doing over this past, you know, 7 months, and learning that part of it, so that as we start going into this next phase and this next year, we can really start to advocate and lift up things that we see that will be beneficial to our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I could say that I've always known you not to be thirsty. So meaning this is not what you were championing. Oh my, this will be the end all be all. I have arrived.
That's why I insist on brother. If I can say that. Because out of all of the titles and all of the roles and responsibilities that I've had, the one thing that keeps me grounded is just trying to be a really good brother. And if I can do that, you know, my work is done. We outside, y'all.
Yeah. We outside. We are in the community that this brother serves. And it's so funny, because while you're hearing the motorcycle go by, we're watching water. There's a water fountain that works. It's not clogged. Somebody had to go out there on a boat or something, make sure that thing keeps working, because that's beautiful, because nobody wants to sit in water. Right. So there's movement in this water. And there's kids, families and their children out here playing, like old school playing, like they're racing. Adults and children are racing. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. And birds, or, you know, like birds don't want to be someplace where it's toxic. So thank you for your work around environmental advocacy for this community specifically. And thank you for your service. And thank you for your willingness to heed the call, and to not dull the voice, but to keep sharpening the sword to do the work for people like me. I feel like you're elected. You're a voice for me. In that when you're there, I'm good.
Yeah.
So you got to help me to not think that way.
Yeah.
So the question is, the question is, what can we do to help? How can we those that are engaged, those are not engaged, those that are not political, those are political. How could we help you? Because I think sometimes we vote and then we're like, that's it. We got him elected. He go from here. We'll wait. We'll get back together when it's time for election again. How can we help?
That's a great question, and one I'm still wrapping my mind around. I think one of the biggest ways is, of course, registering to vote if you're not registered, and really understanding your self-interest, and being aware that the decisions that we make as a council have potential impacts on you directly and not, indirectly. So if you're an artist, understand the policy side of what we're doing as a city government to support artists, and then know that this is the way that you would like to be supported, and bring that to me so that we can articulate and represent that. If you're a builder, be very clear on what policies are helping you as a builder and what are negatively impacting
hindering you.
And then everybody really understanding and being able to articulate what your self-interest is, and then bring that to me so that we can workshop it together and co-create solutions that we can advocate for and champion.
How do people find Brother John these days?
How
do they in these streets? How can they find and connect?
Is a big one. But if you want to contact me directly, you can go to john.muhammad@stpete.org. That's the official email. And then yourbrotherjohn.com is a way that you can get me if you want to book me for other stuff, not council related. And then we're developing a platform for District 7 called D7speaks.com. And D7 Speaks is where we'll be putting our surveys, putting the survey results, clips from council, so that you can see what we're doing, what we're talking about.
Wow, that's creating more. Yeah, I'm always like, it's happening when people working.
Yeah. And so being able to put, replays and links to, because there's a lot on the City of St. Pete's website that's available, but again,
knowing to hunt for it, know where to look, how to find
knowing what your self-interest is, and the listening that we've done and have been doing and will continue to do, is saying, okay, this is what these are the priorities from the folks that we've talked to. Here's a place where you can go and hear that directly. So if housing is your thing, we'll have that. Jobs and employment, youth, and being able to have these programs and access, we want to be able to put it in one spot. So d7speaks.com is another space.
Again, thank you. Look, I know we left y'all with some bits and bites to chew on. I mean, please, y'all just got a whole meal. So you should feel full, rest up, and then get involved. Thank you for spending some time listening. Feel free to share and understand the importance of connectivity with one another.